I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about my life, my children, my students, and some of the things that I've learned in all the years that I've been teaching and leading. I like the title of the conference, She Owns Her Success, because that is actually the truth. You own your success, and she owns her success, and encapsulates everything that I'm going to be talking about. So the very first slide I have says, she owns her success, simple lessons for radical results. If you take a look at the pictures on that slide, they are leaders in the world. They're famous women. Three of them at the bottom are from South Africa. The one second from the left is the leader of Germany. And then there's Oprah Winfrey. There's the leader of Iceland and the leader of New Zealand. It's pretty amazing. And of these 10 women that are here, 2 of them are my daughters. And I think I can probably say safely that there is no other mother in the world that has had 2 of her daughters on the Fortune 100 most powerful women. My daughter Susan is in the upper left, and my daughter Anne is the second from the upper right. Susan is the CEO of YouTube, and Anne is the co-founder of the personal genetics company 23andMe. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this and what I think we can all do as women to make a difference in the world and make a difference in our lives. So this is my newest book, which is out in paperback actually this week. And so you should be able to get it in South Africa as well. It's called How to Raise Successful People. It was out last year at this time. It launched in hardback, and it was a bestseller on Amazon. And I was really thrilled to see that. And there's a lot of reviews on Amazon if you're interested. So the quote here is from Arianna Huffington, and I think I'll just read it to you to make sure you get it. Parenting in our digital age is a brave new frontier, fraught both with parents and children, fraught for both parents and children. But as Esther Wojcicki, beloved teacher, parent, and writer, whose works I've long admired, shows, modern parenting can be a joy instead of a constant struggle. And that's the goal of my book, is to help you find it as a joy. There's also other messages that I have in the book, particularly for business and for schools. And the question is, how can what I present in the book help you as a person in the business world and help you if you're a teacher in the schools? So it's stories about my life. These are stories about my life, my children, and my students. They're stories with a point. So I don't just randomly tell you stories, because I've got a lot of really great stories, but they have no point. The stories are all supported by research. And they're stories that hopefully will change lives. And I know for a fact they have changed lives already. So I see storytelling as a change agent, because people remember stories. They don't necessarily remember facts, but they always remember stories. The book, as I said, the story of my life. I am the child of Russian Jewish immigrants who escaped the pogroms in the 1930s. And so I was the first one born in the United States. The family celebrated me as the first American. It was pretty exciting for everybody, especially for me. I was kind of like the center of attention. But when I was a child, this is something that you should know about. Girls could only wear dresses. You weren't allowed to wear pants. Women could not get a credit card. Women could not get a bank loan. All women took the name of their husband. When I got married, I became Mrs. Stanley Wojcicki. I didn't even have my first name. It was crazy. All the mail was addressed that way. Everything. And when I gave birth to my first daughter, Susan, there was a birth announcement in the newspaper. And the birth announcement said, Stanley Wojcicki, girl, 8 pounds, 8 ounces. And it was like I didn't have anything to do with it. It was kind of amazing. Also, most women did not work outside the home. Being a homemaker was considered the life of a woman. That's what you did. And women obeyed. I mean, this was part of the culture. Nobody told you that. It was just the way life was. Also, sexual harassment was common. It was just happening every day. There was a lot of whistling, a lot of pinching, and a lot of grabbing. And it was considered masculine. And all the guys would just do it. And the girls were just like, okay, you just had to cope. So when I went to college, I majored in political science, English, and then later got a degree in journalism. And one of the things that happened to me as a journalist is that I could not get into the press club. And we're like, why? What was the matter? Because I was a woman. I couldn't get in. They didn't allow women in. Also, the only section I was allowed to write for was the women's section. And you're like, what section was that? Well, back in the 1960s, there were multiple parts of the paper. 1, the news section, 2, the opinion section, 3, the sports section, and 4, the women's section. And that was what was written for women. Women were supposed to read, how to take care of children, how to take care of your husband, what was the best vacuum cleaner to buy. That was what I was supposed to write for. Dear Abby was an advice columnist, and that's what the women were supposed to be reading. Anyway, I did not like this idea at all. So I rebelled. So I just want you to know that, it was not a simple path. So the number one goal for my children, when I had children, which is, Susan was born in the late 60s, was for them to think independently and to be independent. So prior to the birth of Susan, we lived for 2 years in France and in Switzerland. And I loved living there. First of all, I loved the culture. And then secondly, I loved the food. I thought it was great. But the same treatment of women was happening there. It was not just the United States. No one worked. No woman that I knew worked. They just didn't. So as I said, my number one goal for my kids was like, when they were born, I want them to think independently and be independent. And so here they are. This picture was taken in Geneva, Switzerland. Here they are today, the 3 of them. Janet's in the middle. Susan and Anne are on the other 2 sides. And this is Susan today, the CEO of YouTube. Janet, she's a professor of pediatrics at the University of California Medical Center, and she focuses on the obesity epidemic worldwide. And this is Anne. She's the founder of 23andMe, the largest personal genetics company in the world. And what did I teach them? How did I get them to want to do something like this, be in a world where they basically were leaders? So this is what I taught them, because all these friends of mine were asking me, what did you feed them? Because how did you get them to do what they're doing? But it's what I taught them. And I taught them it's okay to take a risk and not succeed. Number one most important thing. I said, try everything. Don't be afraid if you can't do it right. Just do it again. I also provided a safe space for them to be creative and try all the different things they wanted to try. And the main focus was, you are equal to men. It doesn't matter whether you're a girl or a boy, you're both equal. And I remember Janet said to me, I never felt like girls and boys were ever different until I got to high school. And then all of a sudden it looked like, there were things for boys that they could do and girls that they had to do. But actually, they always felt like they were equal. So I also taught them, this is really important. No one can control life, but you can control your reaction to life. We can't control the fact that we have the pandemic, but we can control our reaction to the pandemic. And I'm always looking for good. So this is another way of saying it. When you can't control what's happening, challenge yourself to control the way you respond to what's happening. That's where your power is. And I firmly believe that, because there were many, many times in my life where things did not go the way I wanted them to go. So as I said, this book is autobiographical in many ways. I talk about the fact that I pretty much grew up in poverty. My parents came from Russia to New York City. My father was an artist. Artists don't earn a lot of money. And so we spent a lot of time worrying about where we're going to live, a lot of time worrying about, are we going to have enough food? It was a really challenging time. And my father, unfortunately, never really was able to reach his potential because he could not go to school and could not learn what he wanted to learn. And so we ended up in Los Angeles, and he was not an artist, but he was so talented that he ended up being, he carved gravestones. And he did the art on gravestones, and he did the lettering on gravestones. And so there's like hundreds, probably thousands of gravestones in Los Angeles that he did. So the other thing I think is important for all of us to realize is people make lots of mistakes before they reach their goal. And my daughters also made lots of mistakes, and the goal to the top, or the goal to where they are, came about not because there was an easy path that someone prepared for them, but because they were willing to take setbacks and then continue to work. And that is something that I think we all need to remember, because it's not easy to get to our goal. So my pedagogy continued with the birth of my media arts program, which is at Palo Alto High School. The number one goal for my students, so I've been teaching for 40 years, was to think independently and believe in yourself. Does that sound similar to what I taught my children, my own children? I was in a portable for 30 years. Today, I have the largest media program in the U.S., 10 publications, 700 plus students, 6 other media arts teachers, all teaching with the same educational philosophy. This is what the Pro Media Arts Center looks like today, built by the city of Palo Alto. This is the kind of work that my students produce. This newspaper comes out every 2 to 3 weeks. This is what it looks like in the middle. This is a spotlight section. This is one of the magazines that they do. This 80-page magazine also comes out every 6 weeks. Another magazine, this is Verde, this is all done by kids between the ages of 14 and 18. My book is organized into 5 sections, and the sections all are based on this acronym that's in the book, TRICK. So I start out by talking about the first one, trust, and then how it applies to you as a parent, how it applies to you as a student, how it applies to you as somebody in the corporate world. So I cover all aspects of life, and also how it applies to you in a relationship. So the acronym is trust, respect, independence, collaboration, and kindness. So talk first about trust. It's the most important one. You cannot do any of the others if you don't have trust. If there's no trust, there's no respect, there's no independence. You have to have trust. The most important person you need to believe in and trust is yourself. And why I'm saying this is because I would say most people don't believe and trust themselves. They're always asking other people what they think is the best thing to do. And you can ask like 5 different people and you get 5 different answers. And the next thing you don't know what to do. But what you need to stop and think about is you, yourself, probably can make those decisions independently if you believe yourself and trust yourself. So when you trust people that you're working with, people that you're living with, your children, they then trust themselves because they're like, oh, this person I respect trusts me and believes in me. And so they do a better job. You as a leader provide a culture of trust and caring. What you do and the way you behave creates the culture of where you're working and your family life. You want to be honest. It's so important. Admit your mistakes. That was one thing I did as a teacher that all the kids were always shocked about, that I was willing to admit when I made a mistake. But you know what that did? It made them also willing to admit when they made mistakes because I was the leader. Caring, I was very caring. I followed through on all the promises, and I modeled by taking care of myself. The big 3: sleep well, eat well, and exercise daily. So important. Also, be forgiving. Holding on to anger is like holding onto a hot coal. You are the one who gets burned. This is from Buddha from centuries ago, but it's right. Respect is so important for a team. Number 1, be on time. Respect other people's times. There are a lot of people that don't show up on time or show up, I'm not kidding, an hour late. And what is that saying about respecting the other person and their time? Be available. Be willing to help. Be willing to listen. Be a good listener. Be positive. Model respectful behavior yourself. Don't jump to conclusions. And then for independence, independence boosts self-confidence. When you give kids independence, when you give your employees independence, when you give your partner independence, it boosts the self-esteem and self-confidence. Here's something also that's very important, especially in the day of helicopter parenting. The more you do for your kids, the more dependent they are on you. So if you wonder why your kids feel so dependent and are worried about what they're doing in the world, it's because maybe you did too much for them. I would like to say that I'm against the helicopter parenting. I know it comes from a place where we're all trying to do the best for our kids, but in reality, the more you do for them, the more dependent they are on you. So independence empowers. It empowers kids, it empowers your colleagues, empowers your partners, fills people with enthusiasm. They work harder and they're happier. With collaboration, people follow rules when they collaborate in making them, when they collaborate in coming up with projects, when they collaborate in where we're going for the weekend. I can tell you that my students always came up with the rules for the class together with me. So there was never me having to enforce them because they came up with them. And to this day, the other teachers do the same thing. It's not something that's just tied to me. It's a philosophy that anybody can follow. So it optimizes workflows, it maximizes productivity, spurs innovation, boosts learning and sharing, creates a sense of community. So important, independence and collaboration and kindness. Kindness, treat yourself like a good friend. Be kind to yourself first. One of the things that happens to all of us when something goes wrong, we blame ourselves and then we get really mad at ourselves and then we get depressed. I mean, I know I cannot tell you the number of times in my life this has happened, but it's really important for it to be on a conscious level. So be kind to yourself. And then anyone can make a difference in this. Anyone, so you can walk down the street and see people and they can be friendly and say hello. That can make you feel better. Smile and ask, so how are you? Or when you go to work in the morning, hopefully we will go to work in a building in the morning sometime soon. You can smile at people and be friendly. Practice gratitude. Acknowledge effort, no matter how small. A lot of people do little things for us and no recognition. Always important to acknowledge effort. And remember, a soft answer turns away anger. So when you get mad, count to 3 or maybe 10. Be careful. Remember, we all get angry. Just, it'll pass. So give feedback to people as soon as possible. Don't let them go on doing things that are problematic. Give them feedback as soon as possible and do it with kindness. Never embarrass friends, colleagues, or family. Model kindness yourself. This is what Mark Twain said, I can live for 2 months on a good compliment. The way we speak is as important as what we say. So remember, it's how you speak also. Be humble. And remember, think about yourself as a leader, as a coach. A coach doesn't tell you what to do all the time. They organize, they bring people together so that they can work and they can be the best they can be. The best leaders are humble leaders, and this is what Bill Gates said. And I think, he knows what he's talking about. He's a very smart guy. As we look ahead into the next century, that's the 21st century. So he said this 20 years ago. Leaders will be those who empower others. Remember that. 21st century needs adaptable, self-learners, critical thinkers, creative people, good collaborators. And by the way, I thought this was really interesting. Just came out in the New York Times. Why are women-led nations doing better with COVID-19? Perhaps they're better at being good leaders. So thank you for your attention. You can reach me at LinkedIn. And this is a New Yorker cartoon that I thought summed it all up. It's always sit, stay, heal. Never. Think, innovate, be yourself. So I hope it can be think, innovate, and be yourself. Thank you for your attention.